Welcome everyone. My name is Manny Castro. I'm the Technical Service Specialist here at Siegel Scientific. And today's topic, we're going to be covering VB scripting in BarTender 2016. So today you'll learn how to utilize BarTender's VB script editor. And while most of us know that BarTender can accommodate for most functionality, just out of the box, with VB scripting, though, it allows or it gives you access to some advanced or custom behavior that your scenario may call for. So we will explain the concepts so you're able to, when you do come across the situation where you need a VB script, you'll be able to implement it. And we'll also be diving into the BarTender Designer user interface and explaining how all this works. So before we actually get into the VB script editor and all the details, I want to quickly cover how we're going to address any questions that may come up. So if you do have questions throughout the session, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and expand the GoToWebinar client. You want to find the question section, and there where you see here that it says type your question here, that's where you want to type in any questions that you may have. On the line we also have Jasper from our technical services department as well, and he's going to be organizing any questions that may come in, and we'll make sure that they get answered as long as they are listed there. So let's go ahead and get started. So VB, or a Visual Basic Script, or Visual Basic Scripting, is actually not particular to BarTender. VB Script is a lightweight, general-purpose scripting language. In BarTender, though, it can be used to get the behavior or data you need from your label format. If it cannot be done out of the box for whatever reason, just sometimes you have such particular situations that that's what is required to get what you need across. So here are some examples of how a VB script can enhance your label or add the required behavior. You can generate check digits. This can be done using one of BarTender's built-in check digit generators, or perhaps you have the need to generate a custom check digit, which ties into the fact that you're able to run formulas or expressions on your data. You can also control the objects on your BarTender label. You can call objects and data sources and populate them, or change properties like color or position, and this of course can be done programmatically. And it doesn't have to be BarTender specific functions either. You can use any of VB Script's built-in functionality, such as a file function, so like creating or deleting a file, or connecting to a database, or just parsing your data in a particular way that you need. So while VB Script is not particular to BarTender, there are some things that are necessary to understand in order to best use BarTender's VB Script editor. And it's just how some objects and some components of your label design and how BarTender handles that VB Script. So a few different things to understand. We have multiple types of levels of VB scripts within BarTender. So we have a document level script, which enables you to develop a script to perform processing, validation, object updates, anything that needs to be done on a document level. You can populate other data sources or call other data sources as well from here. These scripts will run based on the time of event that you select, so you're able to select when that script runs. For example, whenever the label opens or on a new record, and I've actually used this in the past to call in a data source that should have a specific value every time the label opens. If that value wasn't correct, pretty much what the script would do is just update that data source and set the correct value, so then we don't have to worry about user error. We can just make sure that that value was updated when the label was open. You can set a data source to a single multi-line or an event control script, and just how when you set a data source to be populated from a database, the same principle applies. Your script or the function that it executes will populate your data source. A single line script is really the simplest of the three that you can select within your data source. It can perform just your basic functions, such as removing a set portion of a data source, clipping or parsing the end of a data source, for example, or searching for and removing certain characters, just as an example, of course. And when a single line expression isn't sufficient, what you can use is the multi-line script. So now a multi-line script requires the use of assignment operators. So what this means is that the result of any function or expression that you write must be assigned to a variable. So if you want to assign a value to the object that contains that script, so if let's say you have a data source, you have set it to a VB script, and it's a multi-line script, what you want to do is set value equals XYZ. So, and lastly, we have, you can set a data source to an event control. So depending on the purpose of your script, you might need it to execute as infrequently as once per print job or upon opening a label, or as often as every single printed item, every single printed copy. So to keep things as simple as possible, BarTender will usually execute your single or multi-line scripts and when it thinks it's most appropriate or when it thinks it's correct. So now if you want more control over that, that's when you would select the event control, and that's when you can actually tell the software, okay, execute at print time or execute upon closing a label, and you have all those options available when you set it to event control. Now, all this is done within the VB script editor. So here's a screenshot of BarTender 2016's script editor. Let's go ahead and just break down some of these sections that we see here, and in order to best use this editor. We have the editor pane in the middle. So this is where you're actually going to write your code or type it in or copy and paste it. You'll notice that we have some built-in features to make scripting as easy as possible. For example, we have syntax highlighting, search and replace, and other scripts, or excuse me, other script editor functions that you would expect. So, and the pane on the left is the script pane. So this is where you will see what part of the label you're writing a script for. You can also navigate to any script available or any script or object currently on your label format. In this list here that you see, you will see like all the scripts that are available when in the past you actually had to dig around into each particular object. So now it's kind of like easier to navigate because we have them all in one central location. And we also feature script libraries now, which is actually particular to BarTender, so not a VB script specific feature. But what a script library is when you're able to write a function or a script and then save that as a file, and you can store that in Librarian, or you can store that in a network directory somewhere, and you're able to import that script library into other label formats. So now what that does is it gives you a central location for these scripts. You're able to, if you make the change to your script library, it will take effect on all labels utilizing that script library. Now, the only thing to be aware of there is that you want to make sure you don't delete that file. If you do delete that file and you have a label that's dependent on it, you will get some sort of error message there that we no longer can access that script library. But otherwise, it's a very useful tool if you have, for example, like a custom check digit of some sort that's utilized across multiple labels. You're able to just share that across label formats without having to type in the whole script for each one. And then we have the script assistant pane, which is on the right hand side by default. And this is actually a very powerful tool that I actually often utilize when I'm working on labels or designing label formats. What it does is it allows you to search our built-in list of functions, operators, and control flow syntax. And once you find what you need, you simply double click on it and the correct syntax will be inserted in the editor pane. So this is just, it helps you make sure that you're not making any typos or anything like that. So if we have, for example, a named data source or something inserted in our script library, we're able to just double click on it. The syntax is thrown into our editor pane, and we don't have to worry about any syntax errors. So I don't see any questions that have come up yet. So now that we have a basic understanding, what we're going to do is we're going to actually dive into the BarTender user interface and see how these different levels of VB script actually work. So here we have just a blank BarTender label. I've actually not created anything on it. There's no database connection or anything like that. But first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a few objects on this label, and we're going to give them names. And what I mean by that is we're going to name the data sources so that we're able to reference them when we're writing our VB script. So before we get into the editor, let's just go ahead and go around and name all these. So we're going to name that one text1, text2, and barcode. Okay, so we have our blank label. We have three named or three objects that are all named data sources. And then if we look on the left, we'll see there that we have them listed. So we can always reference them there if needed. And from there, we go into how do we access our script editor, right? So in BarTender 2016, you can hit Edit up on your taskbar and Scripts, and that brings up your script editor. So now here, we'll see all the objects and all the scripts on our label on the left-hand corner. So this is our script pane. In the center, we have our editor pane, and on the right, we have the script assistant. We're able to test our output. So if we hit test script, we're able to see what the output is on the bottom of the screen. And we can also, if we click on view, we can enable show line numbers, which is something that I always, when I jump into a new label, or if I'm writing any kind of VB script, or I'm doing anything in here, it's something that I enable right away. Some other features is that you're able to import and export scripts, which is a little different than the script libraries, which we'll cover in a second. And we're also able to print scripts. So if you have some sort of complex script, or for whatever reason that you need to print it out, you're able to do that via this panel. And it's actually not going to print out your label format, but so much just the script that you have up on in your editor pane there. So, and also as well, we have the ability to just to only show everything. So for example, like all the available options of where you can write a script and all the objects below it, or just the components that have scripts written to it. So let's go ahead and get started with our script library. So we can create a new script library and save it on our desktop, for example, and we can give it a name. And this is our script library. Or what else we can do is, if we delete this one, we can import a script library as well. So let's say we have a shared one already available, and the extension on those is BT VBS. So we have our function and hello world. And if we notice, we see it now listed under the script library. And on the right-hand side, we see our named data sources. And then below that are script libraries with the ability to insert that in any other script that we have. So let's say we need to, on save, we want to insert this script library. So we see that function, and all I did there was double click that hello world function that we created. So let's go ahead and erase that. And what I want to do is, let's go ahead and create a check digit for this barcode. So let's say that we need a UPS or some sort of check digit for this particular barcode. Another way that you can access the script editor as well is, let's say we want to create a new data source. We want to create a Visual Basic script. So this is our data source level script. We have a single line expression, and this is where you actually see the single, multi-line, or event control script. So for a check digit, this will be sufficient. We're going to hit edit. And let's go ahead and erase the sample there. And if you notice that whenever you access the VB or the script editor, so let's say you open it from a data source or you open it from a particular object somewhere on the label, it always automatically goes to whatever area you opened it from. So for this scenario, I actually opened it from that data source that I have set to a VB script. So now if I had opened it from the transforms of this first data source, it would show up under that level. So let's go ahead and create a check digit for this. So we're going to go ahead and look around for our check digits under functions. And let's just say we need the UPS mod 10 check digit. So we see there, all I did was double click on it, and we have this whole list of built-in check digits available. And if you don't see it listed, pretty much the rule is if you don't see it listed, you're able to just write a script for your own check digit, run your own formula, and get the check digit that you need for your particular scenario. So we'll go ahead and we just double click that. We're going to collapse check digits, collapse functions, and we need the check digit from our barcode. So all I did there was double click on it. If we hit test now, we see that for the particular value that we have in that barcode, the check digit is 4. And we see that in the bottom pane there in our in the output. So we have now created a check digit for our barcode, and we see it now appended to the end of that barcode. So next, what we can do is we can create a transform as well. So let's say that we want to manipulate this data here. We're going to double click on the text object. We're going to click on the data source that we want to set a transform for. We're going to click on the VB script icon. That's going to open up our editor pane, and you'll notice that we have the data source option automatically highlighted there. So we're on the transform here. And something else that we can do is we can set operators. Excuse me, control flow. Sorry about that. So we can set control flow. So pretty much at this point, so if we want to set like an if-then statement, we can set that up, and we can actually, just by hitting tab, we can tab through the available entries. So all this functionality, and that's hitting the tab key on your keyboard there. This just makes it really easy, and it kind of eliminates, if you're doing any kind of like the simple scripts that we're doing today, it eliminates the typos and the syntax errors. While you will get an error message, and it'll notify you that something is not correct or something is not right, using all this functionality just lets you easily use the VB script editor. So let's go ahead and say, let's double click on our barcode. So if we say, if barcode equals if barcode equals that value, then the value of text2 will equal and we do need to quote that out. And if you saw there, I made a syntax error, so and it told us at the bottom what was going on. And then we have no error message. So at that point, what's going to happen is on process data, so when BarTender thinks it's most effective to actually execute the VB script, it's going to execute our if-then statement here. And this right here is what we call a, let's see what other script errors we have. Okay, so this is what we call a transform level VB script. So we have a data source set to a VB script. So this is when the actual VB script is giving the value for the data source. And then we have a transform, which is, and actually, we want this to be value. Okay, so if the value of this particular data source equals that string, then the value of the barcode is correct. So, and that's the mistake that I made there. So pretty much what we're doing here at this level is we're setting a VB script to manipulate the data of this particular data source. So we use that value equals and the string, and whenever we say value within this particular transform here, we're talking about the value of this data source here. So the next thing that we can check, or the next VB script that we can write a sample for, is a document level VB script. So we have over here on the left, if we look at our panel, we can set, for example, on every time we open a label or every time we start a new record, this is when that particular VB script is going to be executed. So let's say upon open, we want to double check that text1 equals test value. So from here on out, what's going to happen is every time we open this particular script, when we what BarTender is going to do for you is it's going to run, or it's going to go ahead and double check text1 and make sure that value equals test value, or whatever string we type in there for that particular scenario. And it'll overwrite whatever value it had previously entered. So it's able to just automate that process without having, or without having any kind of user error. So now, if we look on the left-hand panel here, we have our document level script. We have our data source on process data. We have our data source that we actually set to be a VB script data source. So instead of like a embedded data or a database field, we have it set to a VB script data source. And then we have all the rest of the objects there in the label that don't have anything written for it. But we have all that available here via this script here. And we can collapse it down to show only the values that we have scripts for. So let's go ahead and close that out. Now, the only section that does not have that is not available via the VB, or excuse me, The only thing that you cannot write a VB script for via the edit and the scripts option is for print code modifiers. So if you need to manipulate your print code and write a script for it, you would have to go into File, BarTender Document Options, and hit General on the General tab there, and click on the Visual Basic Script icon. So there we can see, well, we still see our script library because we have imported that into the label for use. And we now see the option there for the print code modifier. So here we're able to write any kind of script that we need if the print code needs to be manipulated. As a note, so with that script library there, you're actually able to open that in Notepad, for example. That is a plain text file. So you have that available that where you can open it up in Notepad and save the changes out. And if you have a document or you have a script written that's used across multiple documents, you can either edit it via opening one of the documents and editing your script library, or you can just do it in Notepad or your favorite text editor there. So now, okay, looks like we just got a question.
Okay, it looks like the first question we got here is, where are the particular script libraries stored? Can they be stored in the system database?
The default location of the script libraries is actually in your program data. And that's where any script that you create is going to be stored, so they are going to be particular to you. So now if you want to actually change it so that it is a network location or it is in the system database, as you mentioned there, what you want to do is just change the default location for the script libraries. That would be under Administer and then Folder and File Location Setup. You're able to there change the location or the default location for the script libraries. And one of the options, if we scroll to the very bottom, is to actually save those in the BarTender system database if needed.
Next question. Can you give us an example of when you would use a print code modifier script?
Yeah, one of the situations that come to mind is we had a scenario where a particular printer, I forget the specifics, but essentially what it needed was it needed a different character, a different control character for the header. And what we ended up having to do for them is write a print code modifier to do a search and replace to get that correct print code so that we were able to successfully print to it.
Okay. Is there a priority in how the Visual Basic script is executed?
Right, so if we have just single line or multi-line scripts throughout the document, and then we also have some perhaps some document level script as well. Those the software just assesses when is the best time to run them, and there is no priority or way to set that up. You would just simply write your script, and then the software will dictate when's the best time to execute that script. Now, if you do need it to run at a specific time, so let's say at print time, or every time the software closes, or every time the label opens, that's when you would use those event control scripts so that you're able to dictate when that script actually runs.
Are scripts stored in librarians shown in a separate folder from the BarTender documents by default, or do we need to manually create those folders separately?
When you go to save them, it's going to select whatever directory you select, even if it's a network directory, a local directory, or librarian for that. So if you do want them to be in their own folder, then you would have to just go ahead and create that, and you are able to do that from the dialog when you change it to the default directory to be in librarian.
In your particular example, text 1 and the barcode both have a single line Visual Basic script. Will the Visual Basic script conflict with each other?
No, unless there's something obvious that that's causing those two scripts to conflict, like they're referencing each other in an incorrect fashion for whatever reason, then you might get a script error. But if they're two separate scripts, or they don't or the code does not conflict with each other, you're allowed to have as many objects containing VB script on your label as you'd like. So every single object on your label could have a VBScript data source if that's what's really required.
Okay. So it looks like that's all the questions we have gotten. So I'll turn it back over to Manny.
That about concludes our section on VB scripting. Just like to thank everybody again for attending. I hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Thanks.